Shane, not Justin Bieber, has established himself as a fantasy baseball ace over the last few seasons. Can he continue that dominance, or is his stuff actually diminishing? We'll discuss that and more on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source for fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I am your host, Dominic Martino. You can find us on all podcasting apps and social media platforms. Just search for Locked On Fantasy Baseball, and we'll be there. Please be sure to subscribe and review if you listen on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else that allows that. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit the subscribe button if you already haven't. Throw us a like and a comment because we love to talk fantasy baseball with you. If you're a fan of Locked On Fantasy Baseball, Matt and I ask if you could, share the word, spread a podcast around to your friends, anyone that likes fantasy baseball or regular baseball. We're getting very, very close to the 1,000 subscriber mark on YouTube, and it goes a long way to help us out once we hit that 1,000 mark. And thank you to everyone that has subscribed already. We truly appreciate you. So on today's episode, we are finally getting to, the nitty gritty here, the middle tier of that starting pitchers. It gets very tough at this point because there's so many good starting pitchers around here. Who's going to take that step to, the next level? That could be in the top 10. Who might not get there? Who's going to fall off a cliff? Because, it happens every single year. But let's get into the number 13 starting pitcher. In this episode, we're using Fantasy Pros ADP here. And we're going to go from 13 to 24. I'll let you know where I have everybody ranked. Also, not to bury the real lead here. If you guys are watching on YouTube and you haven't noticed, Matt is actually having a family emergency today. So everybody, keep Matt and his daughter and their family in your prayers. Nothing too serious, but, just keep the good thoughts going for them. So once again, to, get back into what you guys are here for, some starting pitcher action. We're going with the number 13 starting pitcher according to Fantasy Pros ADP, and that's Carlos Rodon. So if you don't know, Carlos Rodon right now is dealing with a forearm strain. But the good news is today they came out and said that, that Rodon is just dealing with, that forearm strain. It's not too serious. Aaron Boone and the Yankees came out and said that he's going to hopefully be throwing soon and that he might only miss 2 to 3 starts in the regular season. I think that's a bit optimistic, but we'll see. Hopefully the young Carlos Rodon is a quick to recover. I currently moved Rodon down in my rankings. I have Rodon at my number 16 starting pitcher. I'm not too far off from ADP here. But, he is a little bit of a risky pick. I'm not picking him as my ace anymore. If he starts to fall down in drafts, maybe I'll take him as my number 2. But once again, I'm not currently taking Rodon as my ace. But let's talk about what he did last year as a 29-year-old. Carlos Rodon last year had 14 wins, 8 losses, a 2.88 ERA, 31 starts, 178 innings, 237 strikeouts, and he had a 1.02 whip. So, he was absolutely dominant last year, and he was dominant the year before with the White Sox. So he's shown 2 years in a row that he has that ace upside. I just want to see a little bit more from him. Yankee Stadium is tough to pitch in. As you know, Garrett Cole gives up a lot of home runs over there. And, when Frankie Montas came over last year, he was a bit brutal, pretty bad for us, and which, kind of sucked. But let's see what Rodon does. Like I said, currently I have him ranked as my number 16 starting pitcher. I don't think he's a safe pick as an ace right now. Let's move on to our next guy, though. I talked about him a little bit at the top of the episode, and that's Shane, not Justin Bieber. So the thing with Shane Bieber is everybody was talking a little bit of smack about Bieber last year, and they were like, oh, Bieber's not as good as he used to be. Can he keep it going? But Bieber had a pretty good year last year with that 2.88 ERA, a 1.04 whip, 13 wins, 8 losses. Now, the thing is with Shane Bieber is that velocity is down a bit. He peaked in velocity in 2020. He was throwing 94.1 miles an hour at his average. And last year, Bieber went all the way down to 91.2 miles an hour. So I'm a little bit worried about the velocity. That's why I believe he threw his fastball a little bit less last year, around 35% of the time. But he has a good slider, curveball. He throws that cutter about 16% of the time. He even mixes in a changeup every once in a while. So the guys with good arsenals usually pitch longer into games. And I think Shane Bieber will do that for you. I think he's going to give you a solid amount of innings. And I currently have Shane Bieber ranked as let's see where I have Shane Bieber. I have Shane Bieber at 13. I think he gets a lot of hate. I know, like I said, the velocity's down a bit, but I think Shane Bieber will actually be pretty good for your fantasy team. I have him right outside of that, that top 12, which is, standard league is usually about 12 guys. So, everyone has an ace. And I think Shane Bieber's right outside of that. He's a very, very elite number 2 starting pitcher, and he's been solid for the last 4 years. I think he gets around a 3 ERA. He's shown that he can throw 200 innings multiple times. He may not be that K per 9 guy anymore, but he's right below it. And, the whip's pretty solid too. Career 109 whip for him. So I think Shane Bieber is a pretty safe pick when it comes to fantasy baseball this year. Now let's talk about somebody. If you guys have watched any of Matt and I doing mock drafts this, off season, this is somebody Matt and I have been targeting quite a bit, and that's Julio Urias. Now, Julio Urias is coming off the board as the 15th starting pitcher, pick 50 overall, and I think that's a great pick. I currently have Julio Urias as my number 11 starting pitcher, so he has that ace upside. I truly believe it. He's actually doing pretty damn good so far in spring training. So far in spring training, Julio Urias is a 1.35 ERA, 6.2 innings. He's only given up 5 hits, no walks. He struck out 5, and he's got a great 0.75 whip. The thing with Julio is the Dodgers have finally unleashed him over the last few years, and you got to love that. Last year, Julio Urias had 17 wins, 7 losses, a 2.16 ERA, 31 games started, 175 innings, 166 Ks, and a 0.96 whip. Now, on his career, Julio Urias is right under that K per 9, but, in 2021, he threw 185 innings, 195 Ks, and I really like that for Julio Urias. I think he can come very, very close to that K per 9, might even get back to it this year. A lot of upside. He's still only 26 years old, so he's going to, he's in his prime. I think Julio Urias is definitely, he has that ace caliber. He's an absolutely elite number 2 starting pitcher when it comes to fantasy baseball. Next up, we have Zack Wheeler. Zack Wheeler is currently coming off the board as the number 16 starting pitcher, according to Fantasy Pros ADP, pick 51.6 overall. Now, I actually have Zack Wheeler, believe it or not, as my 10th overall starting pitcher. Absolute ace, according to, me at least anyway. And I think most people would agree with that. And when it comes to fantasy, I feel like he's going a little bit low. He's getting rocked so far this spring training, but, spring training stats don't put too much into it. So for the last 3 years, Zack Wheeler has been a sub-3 ERA guy. He threw 213 innings in 2021 with 247 strikeouts. Last year, Zack Wheeler threw 153 innings, 2.82 ERA, 163 Ks, and those 153 innings, and a 1.03 whip. Now, I think Zack Wheeler is going to go out there for the Phillies and be absolutely dominant this year. I think you take him and you walk away very, very happy if you get him as your number 2 starting pitcher, which is currently where he's going. So, guys, real quick, here at Locked On, we're super excited about our new sports betting partner, and that is FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and the midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bucks back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line, points scored, and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. Guys, those parlays hit pretty well. If you want to bet on multiple different things, those parlays play out pretty good. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, guys, that's normally It's not my read, but, I think I did a decent job, filling in for my brother Matt today. So let's keep it moving, for the reason that you guys are here, and let's talk about some more starting pitchers, and let's talk about the Mountain, Alek Manoah, one of the best nicknames in baseball, according to me. He's a very big boy. I've seen him pitch at Yankee Stadium a couple times. Manoah is 6'6", 285. He's an absolute beast of a man. So, last year was Manoah's, sophomore year, and he did not sophomore slump at all as a 24-year-old. Alek Manoah last year, 16 wins, 7 losses, a 2.24 ERA, 31 starts, 196 innings, 180 Ks, and he had an 0.99 whip. Now, Alek Manoah is currently coming off the board as the number 17 starting pitcher, pick 56 overall. And I think that's a solid deal for Alek Manoah. I believe I'm pretty on par there with ADP because I have Alek Manoah as my 19th starting pitcher, so I'm only a couple picks off. The thing with Alek Manoah, though, is last year that K per 9 kind of fell off dramatically. I believe he was trying to, suppress runs, not strike everybody out, and it worked out for him because that ERA dropped pretty much a full run last year. I think Alek Manoah does have ace upside. He's still only going to be 25 years old this year. I think Alek Manoah is a very, very awesome number 2 pitcher. Toronto, I think, is going to be a very dominant team this year, so the upside of wins is definitely there for Manoah. And, you definitely take Manoah with confidence this year. This is just that tier of starting pitcher where I don't have qualms with too many of these guys. I think at this point in the draft, you look at these names and you kind of just pick your favorite. I don't think there's too many spots you can go wrong. I will mention a few guys here on this list that I'm not huge fans of coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. But next up, we have Max Fried. Now, Max Fried is just, I think, reliable at this point. We kind of know what Max Fried is at this point in his career. He's been around for a little bit. He's going to be 29 years old, which actually kind of shocks me a little bit. How long Max Fried's around. I remember when the kid came up and everybody was absolutely drooling over him. But last year, Max Fried, 14 wins, 7 losses, 2.48 ERA, 30 starts, 185 innings, 170 Ks with a 1.01 whip. And like I said, just the last 3 years, you kind of know what you're getting here with Max Fried because he's been just super, super consistent over that time. It's about how many starts is it? It's about 50, 60 starts. He's right under that K per 9. He's going to win a lot of games on that solid Braves team. And the whip is always pretty good. Over the last few years, it averages out to about a 106 whip. I think, once again, this is a guy you just take with confidence. I currently have Max Fried as my number 22 starting pitcher, so I'm not too far off from ADP that has Max Fried going as the number 18 pitcher, pick 58 overall. Definitely a guy that I would target as your number 2 starting pitcher as well. Now, coming up, this guy is somebody that I'm not truly targeting. It's Yu Darvish. He's the 19th overall starting pitcher according to Fantasy Pros ADP, pick 60.4 overall. And I know Yu Darvish had a monster year last year, but when does he fall off? When does he not, just keep doing it? He's going to be, he's going to be 36 years old this year, and I'm just waiting, thinking he's going to fall off. He had a pretty bad 2021. He had a bad 2019. He had a bad 2018. 2020 was stellar, but it was only 76 innings. And last year, Darvish was pretty good. He found that stride. He had 16 wins, 8 losses. Yu Darvish had that 3.10 ERA, 30 starts, 194 innings, 197 Ks, and he had an 0.95 whip, which for most of his career, has been a pretty solid whip guy. Now, he's just not somebody I'm targeting at the moment. As I said, he's getting older. The velo's coming down a little bit. The breaking stuff has always been pretty good for Yu Darvish. That's where he really, is his bread and butter. I currently have him as my 27th starting pitcher, though. And once again, I said Fantasy Pros ADP has him at 19, so I'm almost 10 spots off. I think Yu Darvish is a better 3 than a number 2. I'm just not really sure on Yu Darvish this year, to be honest with you. He's, once again, not somebody that I'm personally looking to draft. Now let's move on to somebody that I actually do like quite a bit, and that's Luis Castillo. I actually got the throwback Reds Luis Castillo on here, the 58. Luis Castillo is just very, very good, and he gets to move out of that poor pitching park in Cincinnati, and he's over in Seattle now. Seattle's just a way better team than Cincinnati, so I think those that win total is going to come up. He was very, very good after the move to Seattle last year. But let's talk about Luis Castillo's full season stats from last year. It was 8 wins, 6 losses. I think he absolutely crushes that win total, and he comes up to like 15, 16 wins. He had a 2.99 ERA, 25 starts, 150 innings, 167 Ks, and a 108 whip. I think Castillo is going to be motivated, playing for a playoff contender. I think he gets the job done. I currently have Luis Castillo as my number 21 starting pitcher, which I actually think I'm going to toy around with and move up a bit because I do like Luis Castillo. He's currently coming off the board, according to Fantasy Pros ADP, as the 20th pitcher, pick 62.4 overall. And I think that's a great pick for him. I would love him there. He's a very strong number 2. If you get him as your number 3 starting pitcher, you walk away with an absolute steal there because I think he has, top 15 upside. I actually do. I do got to move him up a little bit in my rankings. I got to find the room to move him up. So now, next up, guys, if you know me, if you listened to the podcast last year, this guy is somebody I just ranted and raved about. And if you listened to me early in the season, you picked him up, it paid off big time. And that is Cristian Javier. I can't say enough good things about Javier. He's currently coming off the board as number 21 starting pitcher 62.8. I have Cristian Javier as my number 14 starting pitcher. I think he has absolute ace upside. And now the thing is, he has great stuff too, man. He has a great fastball. He has great breaking stuff. They can't, I believe there's some hitters that have come out talking about Javier. They're like, I can't time up his stuff. It's just too good. It's almost unhittable. Now, Cristian Javier last year, Astros said, you know what, we're going to let him loose. We're going to let him do his thing. And Javier's a 25-year-old last year, 11 wins, 9 losses, 2.54 ERA, 25 starts, 148 innings, 194 Ks, and an 0.94 whip. Now, his stuff is great. May not be as good as Spencer Strider, but the discount you're getting between the two of them is absolutely crazy, where Strider is just going up draft boards. Strider's up to the number 7 starting pitcher, pick 33 overall. Javier's going 30 picks later at 62. I think Javier has that ace upside, and you could take him as your number 2 starting pitcher these days and be absolutely thrilled with what you're going to get from him because he's just an absolute monster. I'm personally taking him everywhere I can this year, and I think you should as well. Let's move on to somebody else I'm not a huge fan on, but I do like him, and that's Kevin Gausman. Now, Kevin Gausman last year, his numbers weren't as good as his, underlying numbers. We don't really get too crazy here with all those crazy statistics. We want to talk in terms that everyone is capable of understanding, a family-friendly show here. We those young kids that are just getting into fantasy baseball and, want to just be able to understand the podcast and what they're talking about. That's why we try and break things down for you a little bit simpler here. But, Gausman's underlying numbers did look better, just meaning that a lot of his indicators said that he should have been better than he was. So last year, Kevin Gausman, as a 31-year-old, had 12 wins, 10 losses, 3.35 ERA, 31 starts, 174 innings, 205 Ks with a 1.23 whip. Now, he has a career 1.27 whip. I know he was good in 2020 and 2021 with the whip, but I'm not sure if that's exactly what I'm believing in. So Gausman's definitely going to give you a solid ERA. He's going to give you a bunch of Ks. The wins should be solid on that Toronto team, but the whip, the whip is a killer. So if you kind of went with some guys earlier that may not have the best whips or are questionable in their whip, I don't know if Gausman's that guy. I currently have Gausman probably too far down. I have him at 37. Might have to move him up a little bit. Gausman's currently coming off the board as the 22 starting pitcher, pick 63.4 overall. A little rich for my blood. If I can get him as my number 4, which probably isn't going to happen, that's where I would be targeting him. But I don't really know if that's what I want to do at the end of the day when it comes to that pick. There's a lot of other guys I do like over him. Gausman is a great pitcher, don't get me wrong. Just not somebody I'm truly, truly targeting this year for fantasy. Next up, we got Framber Valdez. Now, Framber Valdez kind of came out and didn't really come out of nowhere, but what he did, I think, shocked a lot of people last year. He led the league in quality starts. He went very deep into a lot of games as a 28-year-old. I will call it a breakout. Last year, Framber Valdez's career high in innings was 134. Then he comes out last year And Framber Valdez wins 17 games, 6 losses, 2.82 ERA, 31 starts, 201 innings. So that's a 70 inning increase for Framber Valdez. He had 194 Ks and a 115 whip. So Framber Valdez is another guy. He's not a great whip guy. He's a decent whip guy. Once again, on his career, it's a 125 whip. So, I mean, maybe he's improved enough that the whip will stay a little bit lower than his career numbers. But I do like him, especially if you went a little bit, you went a little bit risky at the top. Maybe you took some injury-prone guys or something like that. I think Framber Valdez, definitely around a 3.2 ERA, 3.3 ERA. The innings should be good because they let him loose last year. He threw 200. He could throw 200 again. He's very close to that K per 9, which is very, everyone's thoughts that everyone wants. And the whip is a little bit questionable. We'll see where it goes, but I think he can keep it up in the whip department. I currently have Framber Valdez as my number 28 starting pitcher, which, I love him there. And he's currently coming off the board as number 23 starting pick. Oh, Lord, with stuttering over here. I'm sorry about that, fellas. So pick 71 overall, which I think is a bargain. If you get him as your number 3-4 starting pitcher, I think you're going to make out very, very well. But guys, with that being said, there's somebody that I really need to talk about now, and that's our newest sponsor, Ultimate Baseball GM. Have you ever dreamed of becoming an MLB GM and managing your own professional baseball franchise? Well, guess what? Your dream has come true now. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. In Ultimate Baseball GM, you are responsible for hiring the right coaches and staff to manage your team and finances, scouting and drafting players, also managing difficult personalities, navigating your franchise through free agency and all the ups and downs of a season. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable without Wi-Fi, so you can play on the go as you want, when you want. I've been absolutely hooked on this game since I've downloaded. You compete against your friends like Matt and I have been doing, and you guys need to do the same. Locked On Fantasy Baseball listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So please be sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up in the App Store. That's probaseballgm.com, Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. So with that being said, guys, we're moving into, maybe I'll try and sneak in a couple more starting pitchers here for you. But next up, we have somebody that I'm actually a huge fan of, and that's Zac Gallen. Now, Zac Gallen had a monster, couple of seasons there in, his first few years. But, he dealt with a few injuries there. I believe it was an injury to the arm, and that kind of, messed him up. He had a bad 2021. And, everyone was kind of on the fence about him, like, oh, does Zac Gallen bounce back? Is that it for him? Were those first 2 years a fluke? And Zac Gallen came back last year, and he said, absolutely not. So Zac Gallen last year as a 26-year-old had 12 wins, 4 losses, 2.54 ERA, 31 starts, 184 games, and 192 strikeouts with a solid 0.91 whip. Now, Zac Gallen has great stuff, guys. He's not on a great team, but the stuff kind of overrides that. I think actually the Diamondbacks could surprise teams this year and be a little bit better than people expect with Corbin Carroll. Maybe they bring some up of the other young guns, Jake McCarthy, Christian Walker. There's a few guys there. Maybe Ketel Marte bounces back. I have Zac Gallen currently as my number 18 starting pitcher. He's currently coming off the board, according to Fantasy Pros ADP, as the 24th starting pitcher, pick 73.6 overall, and I love that. I think Zac Gallen is a great number 2 starting pitcher for your fantasy baseball teams. You can currently get him right around that. Maybe he falls a little bit, and he winds up being your number 3 starting pitcher. And if you get Zac Gallen as your number 3, I think you're making out like a bandit because he's just got a lot of upside. He's still super young. And I think he's got all the upside in the world. He's definitely somebody I'm currently targeting this year for, fantasy drafts. And in his first 2 years, don't forget, he was absolutely dominant with that 2.81 ERA in 2019, 2.75 ERA in 2020. He was over a K per 9 in both of those years. The whip was a little high in his first year with the 1.22. Second year, he toned it down to a 1.11. and he's a career 1.10 whip guy and that's over 457 innings, and he's well over a K per nine in those 457 innings with 509 Ks. So Zac Gallen is definitely somebody you should get on or try and get on all of your fantasy baseball teams this year. Now, this next guy is somebody that Matt might be a little bit mad that he's not here to talk about, and that's Triston Mckenzie. I know Matt has him way higher than this. Currently, he's coming off the board as the number 25 starting pitcher, pick 86.2 overall. I currently have Triston Mckenzie as I got to fix that. I have him a little bit too low. I'm going to probably wind up with Mckenzie around my 30th starting pitcher, which is a little bit lower. I just think he needs to put a little bit of weight on that frame. He's 6'5", 165, very Chris Sale-ish. And we know Chris Sale didn't really get hurt until later in his career, but it just worries me a little bit for Mckenzie. Now, last year, Triston Mckenzie, as a 24-year-old, 11 wins, 11 losses, a 2.69 ERA, 30 starts, 191 innings, 190 Ks, and that 0.95 whip. Something that Mckenzie's just shown that he's good with his whole career is the whip. He's a 1.02 whip guy for his whole career, which is absolutely stellar. 344 innings on Mckenzie's career, 368 Ks, which I absolutely love. I think Mckenzie could have a monster year this year. He's, as far as the innings, we'll see where it goes. He'll come very close to a K per nine. That Guardians team is pretty good. He should get a decent amount of wins. If you can get Mckenzie as your number 3 starting pitcher, I think you're going to be pretty happy when it comes to fantasy baseball this year, guys. Now, like I said, I got to move him up a little bit in my rankings. If you didn't already know and you're still hanging in here, Matt and I's rankings are skewed to head-to-head roto leagues. They also work for regular roto leagues, and go check those out on our website. But guys, I think I'm going to call it quits here for today. So please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. As I mentioned, check out that website. There's information about us. You get access to all of our episodes there. And once again, check out those rankings. I know you're going to need them with the biggest draft weekend in fantasy baseball coming up next weekend. This weekend is another big weekend for drafts. I know I have a couple big drafts this weekend. I'm definitely going to use those rankings, which you guys should as well. Please be sure to, tune in tomorrow where hopefully Matt will be back and we'll be doing some deep dives when it comes to starting pitching, which Matt and I are known for. You're definitely going to want to be here for that episode. And thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. After you make us your first listen, go check out Locked On Padres with our pal Javier. Javier had us on the show the other day. It was an awesome episode. We had a lot of fun, talked a lot about some fun stuff. Definitely a lot of useful information when it comes to the Padres. There's so many fantasy superstars on that Padres team. You're going to want to go and check that out. Once again, that's Locked On Padres with our pal Javier. Guys, thank you for tuning in. But until next time, see you.